Think about everything school made you memorize: the quadratic formula, the parts of a cell, the dates of ancient battles. Now, try to remember the class where they explained your paycheck, your credit score, what a mortgage actually is. That class never existed, and it shows. When researchers test American adults on basic money questions, the average score is 49%, a failing grade, and it hasn't moved since 2017. That's not because money is hard, it's because nobody was taught. So this video is the class you never got. 9 ideas, about 13 minutes. By the end, you'll understand money better than half the adults around you. Let's start where every paycheck starts, with the part that vanishes before you ever see it. The number in your job offer is your gross pay. What lands in your account is your net pay. The gap is taxes, plus contributions to things like retirement and public health insurance. Fair enough. But here's where almost everyone gets it wrong. In one recent survey, barely half of people understood how tax brackets actually work. The other half believe something that quietly terrifies them: that a raise could push their whole income into a higher bracket and they'd take home less. Here's the truth. Picture your income pouring down a staircase of buckets. The first bucket is taxed at a low rate. Once it's full, the overflow spills into the next bucket, which is taxed a little higher, then the next. Being in the 22% bracket doesn't mean all your money is taxed at 22%. It means only the water in that top bucket is. Every dollar below it keeps its old, lower rate forever. A raise fills new buckets. It never retaxes the old ones. So, through income tax alone, a raise cannot shrink your take-home pay. Ever. To be fair, some government benefits phase out as income rises, and that's a real edge case for some families. But the fear that half of workers carry, that a raise can backfire through taxes, is a myth. Never turn down money. So, you keep your net pay. What's the first thing it should do? Most people say invest it or enjoy it. The boring, correct answer is build a wall. The Federal Reserve asks Americans a simple question every year. Could you cover a surprise $400 expense with cash? More than a third say no. One pothole, one broken tooth, one dead refrigerator, and they're borrowing at 21% interest. That's how a $400 problem becomes a $4,000 hole. An emergency fund is the wall between one bad day and that hole. It's not an investment. It doesn't need to grow. It needs to exist. Start embarrassingly small if you have to. Even a few $100s absorbs the kind of surprise that knocks a third of the country over. Then build toward 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. And don't rely on willpower. Set up an automatic transfer for payday, so saving happens before spending gets a vote. Pay yourself first. It's the oldest rule in personal finance because it works. Now, where do those bricks come from if your paycheck already feels spent? This is where people imagine budgeting means logging every coffee in a spreadsheet. It doesn't. A budget is a split, not a ledger. Here's the most famous starting point, the 50-30-20 rule. Roughly 50% of your take-home pay for needs: housing, food, transport, insurance. 30% for wants. And yes, wants are a planned category, not a sin. 20% for saving and paying off debt. That's the whole thing. If you live in an expensive city, your numbers will bend, and that's fine. The power isn't precision. It's that most people have never once assigned their income any percentages at all. Do it once, and you've done more than most. That 20% slice has 2 jobs: building your wall and fighting a machine that works against you while you sleep: debt. Here's the cleanest way to think about it. Debt is renting money, and the interest rate is the rent. Sometimes renting money is smart. A mortgage lets you rent a large amount cheaply to buy something that usually grows in value. But credit card debt is different. The average interest rate on cards that carry a balance is just over 21%. At that rate, there's a brutal piece of math called the Rule of 72. Divide 72 by the interest rate, and you get the years it takes a debt to double. 72 divided by 21, about 3.5 years. Ignore a card balance for 3.5 years, and you owe twice as much, for nothing. which leads to one of the most useful secrets in finance. Paying off a 21% debt is mathematically identical to earning a guaranteed 21% return. No stock, no fund, no crypto coin reliably pays that. If you're carrying expensive debt, killing it is the best investment you will ever have access to. And whether banks offer you cheap rent or expensive rent depends on a 3-digit number nobody explained either: your credit score. People treat it like a mysterious judgment of their character. It isn't. It's a track record with a published recipe. The biggest maker of these scores, FICO, lists the ingredients on its own website. 35%. Do you pay your bills on time? 30%. How much of your available credit are you actually using? Keep that low. 15%. How long you've had credit. And 10% each for new applications and the mix of accounts. That's it. 2 behaviors dominate everything: pay on time, every time, and don't max out your cards. And one myth to kill on the way out: you do not need to carry a balance to build credit. Paying in full builds the exact same payment history without paying a cent of rent. Everything so far protects the money you have. The second half of this class is the part almost nobody is taught: how money grows. Meet 2 savers. Both invest $200 a month into the same thing, earning the same average return. Let's assume 7% a year. The only difference: one starts at 25, the other waits until 35. The early starter puts in $96,000 over 40 years and ends up with around $525,000. The late starter puts in $72,000, only $24,000 less, but ends up with around $244,000. 10 years of waiting cost more than $250,000. Those numbers are an illustration, not a promise, but the shape of the math is real. Money earns returns, and then those returns earn returns. The curve starts flat and then leaves the straight line behind. Time in the game beats almost everything, including talent. Which raises the obvious question: invest in what? Surely picking winning stocks is a skill for professionals. Here's the fact that surprises almost everyone. S&P Dow Jones Indices tracks how professional fund managers perform against a simple market index, a fund that just buys a small slice of every big company and does nothing clever at all. Over the 15 years through 2024, they tracked 22 categories of professionally managed U.S. stock funds. The number of categories where most professionals beat the boring index? 0. Warren Buffett was so confident in this, he bet $1 million on it. In 2008, he wagered that a plain S&P 500 index fund would beat a basket of elite hedge funds over 10 years. The index returned 7.1% a year, right through the 2008 crash. The hedge funds managed 2.1%. It wasn't close. So the strategy the evidence supports is almost insultingly simple. Buy the whole orchard instead of guessing which tree will fruit, keep fees near 0, and wait years, not weeks. Markets will fall some years. That's the honest price of the returns. And 2 upgrades make it stronger. First, retirement accounts. In America, a 401k or an IRA, and most countries have an equivalent, are tax-advantaged wrappers that let long-term money grow with less tax. Second, if your employer matches retirement contributions, that's an instant, guaranteed return, up to 100% on every matched dollar. It's the only free money in finance. Never leave it on the table. But while your orchard grows, something invisible is rising around it: inflation. Central banks aim for prices to rise about 2% every year, on purpose. That's official policy. which means cash hidden under a mattress is designed to lose buying power. At 3% inflation, the rule of 72 says your cash loses half its purchasing power in about 24 years. Now here's the detail banks would rather you not notice. The average American savings account pays 0.38%, the same institution charging 21% on a credit card. Meanwhile, high-yield savings accounts, same insurance just online, pay around 4%. Same money, 10 times the interest. That's where your emergency fund belongs. So before you open one, take 10 minutes and compare rates yourself. It's a small effort for a real difference. One last shield, and the class is complete. Insurance. Here's the entire concept in one sentence. You pay a small, certain fee so that a rare, catastrophic bill can't erase you. In the U.S., an average 3-day hospital stay costs around $30,000. That's the kind of number insurance exists for. So insure what would destroy you: your health, your home, your liability, and your income. Term life insurance if someone depends on it. And relax about the rest. The phone screen protection, the extended warranty on a toaster, that's what your emergency fund is for. Now look at what just happened. Taxes, the wall, the split, debt, your score, compounding, index funds, inflation, insurance. 9 ideas, 1 page. That's the core that adults average 49% on. You just heard all of it in one sitting. It was never complicated, it was just never taught. The good news? 30 states now guarantee a personal finance course in high school, and the number keeps climbing. The next generation might actually get this in school. But that leaves a question. Should it really have taken this long, or was this always a family's job to teach? Either way, you can't rewind your education. You can only start now. So, 9 ideas. Which one did nobody ever teach you? Tell me in the comments.